privileged to produce the first ever DVD release of the Monster Squad. It was almost exactly 10 years ago today, which impresses the hell out of me. It seems like it was absolutely yesterday. But it's 30 years now, anniversary for the Monster Squad, so we're going to bring up our actors here, starting with Andre Gower.
Maybe. No.
Ryan Lambert is here. Ashley Bank.
Yeah.
Stephen Mott.
Yay!
Our monster, starting with Hunting for Dare. Michael McKay. Tom Noonan. And last but not least, Bob Tebow.
Hey, everybody.
So this is quite a gathering we have. It's one of the largest Monster Squad reunions yet. So I'm just going to start down here with Andre, and we'll just run down the line. Let's talk about how you first got involved with the Monster Squad and what your thoughts were on this project when you were first approached with it on your character, and just what you thought of the whole thing.
Good afternoon. Right into it. Well, you know, it's, everybody always asks how do you get involved with it, and it was really just the normal kind of casting audition, you know, type of scenario. You call up, say, hey, you've been requested to read for this movie. You don't know anything about it. You get kind of some script, and you go and read, and then you get a call back and a screen test, and it just went from there. And then, of course, my auditioning process for this movie was interesting because I didn't originally read for the role of Sean. So I originally read for the role of Rudy, and they obviously went, no. Totally not cool enough. But you can be the geeky leader, so it's fine. So I think everything worked out exactly the way it should have, so they made good choices because Ryan's definitely a cool Rudy. I think that worked out good. But what was the second half of your question?
Well, no, that was basically just your thoughts on everything else.
Perfect, you can come back.
Okay.
All right.
So Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, it was kind of the same thing for me. You know, just auditioning for something. Got the script, read the script, loved the script. Went on audition. I think one of the things that I thought would, you know, sort of like separate me from everyone else as I walked, since I read the script, I walked in, you know, Shane and Fred were there. I saw that Shane had a pack of marbles in his pocket. I said, hey, you know, you mind if I bum one of them? And they kind of looked at each other like, I don't know if we should be giving a kid a cigarette. Hey, you wrote it into the script. So I lit one up in their office and did the scene, and the rest is history.
Ashley, how old were you when you did this movie?
I was 5 when we shot. And we shot in October, right?
Yeah.
We were shooting it during the fall. So I probably was auditioning right around the time I turned 5, maybe a little bit after that. And it was, you know, the same process, except I did not read the script because I could not read. And my mom read pieces of the script and read parts of it to me. And I went in and auditioned. I don't really remember the first audition. I think the first thing I really remember is the screen test, because it was the first time I'd done a screen test. I'd always before just been auditioned and then showed up on set. But I was happy to make it there.
Stephen?
Hi. Yeah. When we made the film, I had just finished a pilot for a series that was called The American Dream. And I was the dad and had 3 recalcitrant kids who didn't want to move from outer Chicago suburbs into the inner city, and I whooped their asses and took them inside. Anyway, I also had 4 children of my own, had 4 at the time, and so when I walked in the door, Peter Hyams, who was the executive producer, said to me, "My wife is in love with you. You will make a great dad. Do you want to play this part?" I said, "Sure." That was it.
Nice.
I remember a particularly long and arduous audition, series of auditions, coming back for the many times to see Peter Hyams and Fred Becker. There was another guy that was going in at the same time as I was, who sort of whittled it down to between the 2 of us. And I guess they were looking for somebody who was really mean, but I got it. Anyway, that's how it went.
Best Dracula ever.
Actually, who was the other actor who was going to be Dracula?
It was Liam Neeson.
No.
He's a wonderful actor.
But they made the right choice.
Yes.
Best Dracula ever.
He's nice to me.
How you get it?
I didn't audition. There were no lines. I Grant McGrailed and kind of ran around in the room and made a fool of myself. But I got auditioned through a local rag paper they had at the time called Drama Log. And they had gone through a whole series of trying to find the Wolfman and the Mommy Tom. Michael, I can tell you that. And that's how we got it. We got it through the this local rag paper, and it was a very small part. It said non-union extras, which is pretty low on the level of acting. So went in there, did cut the role, and I found out later that it was a pretty decent part in the movie. So, Mike.
Okay. My friend, okay, I've always been like really super skinny. And a friend of mine, she's this little tiny ad in the right that said, "Wanted, male, skinny, on the verge of anorexia." Oh man, you should go for that. So I did. So I go to Columbia Studios, and Fred Decker was there. And he was having this big argument with producers. And he said, "Okay, all I want you to do is walk across the room and do this with your hands." And he said, "Now drag your foot." I said, "Okay." And so he goes back to his argument because as far as I'm concerned, that part. He went back to the argument. Then the following day, my job, I got a closet. "Hello, Michael." I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is also from Columbia Studios, Sony Studios." He said, "Congratulations, you had the part for Mommy." Okay, so I got it based on my skinniness. And the rest is history. I fell into monster. So, yay for skinny people.
So I was a big star when this happened. I didn't have to audition. I didn't have to meet anybody. They just gave me the job. And I had just done, and the reason I was sort of noticed is I had just done Manhunter. And so I get all these offers to play all these like terrible people, which is sort of like me. But there was this movie called Near Dark. Does anyone know Near Dark? I didn't do Near Dark. She kind of like begged me and followed me around and called me home and all this shit. And I just read the 2 scripts and thought, this is really sweet. I just played this awful guy. So I did this, which was really proved to be like a great decision for me. That's it.
Actually, there are some members of the cast and the crew who are no longer with us, and I wanted to start with our monster actors, because I imagine they have some very vivid memories of the late Stan Winston. And I was wondering if you could offer your thoughts and experiences on working with Stan.
Stan was a real prick. He loved to torture you, and I would not speak. I guess I'm talking again. I wouldn't speak. I was like Frankenstein from the second I arrived on the set. And so I would come in and I wouldn't talk. And then after a couple of weeks of putting the makeup in, I started makeup on. I used to call him Dada, which he hated. So he decided, he would say, you know, close your eyes, and he would glue my eyes shut. And then he used to glue my arms to the chair with the surgical glue. But he was great. I would just follow him around the parking lot going, Dada. But he was an amazing fucking guy.
Okay, yeah, when I was in the movie, it's like I do certain movements with my shoulder, arms, and everything. And it's like, no, put some more bandage on. So then I get on set and do the scene. He'd be in the background like, and I'm shooting the scene, it's like, and when I see the smile come across his face, it's like, yeah, I did it. It's like, okay, let's do it again. It's like, so I was doing my job.
I mean, I heard later that Stan had created the Wolfman somewhat in his likeness. And after I'd known that, looking at photos of myself in profile, I saw some, you know, resemblance of my profile a little bit with his profile. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing, you know. And just an incredibly talented guy. And yeah, that's pretty much it. My profile a little bit, the bone structure, something connected with when you're casting it, and I think some of that paid off. So.
Yeah, one of the wonderful things that came out of the picture for me was that Stan and I got to be good friends. We, you know, carried on our lives, got to be good friends, and we carried on after the film that way. He was a wonderful artist and a great guy, and also a brilliant torturer. Great Thomas, the eye thing with the contacts. Stan took great pleasure in doing it personally. You know, taking the position of a makeup artist and doing that every time I had to go on. But he never actually looked at himself as being an artist. I paint and I sculpt and I do a lot of different things in visual arts. And he would always say, well, you're a real artist, I'm not. I said, no, I mean, look at the stuff that you do. There's a 30-foot Tyrannosaurus Rex in your studio that you designed and worked on, and right down to the details of the scales on the flesh and everything. It was absolutely beautiful. I said, you are an artist. And so one thing that we can all walk away with and remember dear Stan for what he gave us. Brilliant person.
And one other thing there. The last day we shot, we didn't finish and they had to shoot, we had to go to one extra day, and they didn't have any more appliances to put my makeup on again. So being the good guy I am, I said, I'll just wear it home and come back tomorrow and you can edit and wait and stuff. So I did that, I slept in the thing, we drove around, and then I came back and I did the whole last day. And then when they started to take the makeup off, what they didn't sort of realize is that when you have that sort of pressure pulling on your face, it pulls the outer layer of your skin off. So they took off the appliances, I had these huge blisters hanging off my face. And the makeup guys freaked out and went out and got Stan. And they said, Stan, what are we going to do? I mean, look at him. And Stan walked over and grabbed the things and spread them off my face and threw them on the floor and said, he's okay.
I would like to ask some of the people on this panel about Mary Ellen Trainor, who played Emily Crenshaw, and she passed away a few years ago. What your memories are of her?
I knew Mary Ellen really well. We had done at least one other TV movie together, and she probably is one of the most gracious, loving actresses I've husband and wife, the dad and the mom. And we were sure that that was going to be the hit of the show. It took place behind closed doors, louvered doors. And she always used to say to me, boy, we really did act up a storm.
Mary Ellen was, as Stephen said, one of the most generous, kind, amazing people to work with. She really, in some ways, felt like a second mom to me while we were on set. She was so just sweet and loving. And even later, I hadn't seen her in a long time until a few years ago, and she was just the same, just warm and gracious and loving and sweet, and I mean, just super, super lovely.
Although we didn't have any screen time together necessarily, we were on set together, and I just remember her being a really lovely person, and she was very caring. I remember her asking me to dinner one time, like to her house, like with my mom, and we actually couldn't go, and I kind of regret that because I know that she just hearing these stories. I know she was a very lovely lady, and she is very much missed.
I agree. Super missed. Everybody's mom. Perfect mom. What better movie mom than Mary Ellen Trainer? Even though she wasn't Goonies mom. We won't hold that against her. Perfect movie mom. Did it every time.
And then, of course, Brent, who played Horace, Rachel, sadly passed away almost exactly 20 years ago. And he didn't live long enough to see the resurgence of this movie, which is a real shame because he's such a big part of that movie. And he has the Wolfman's got an art line, for God's sake. This is the line that everyone remembers. What are your memories of Brent?
Okay. Brent was, besides Ashley and Michael, of the older squad, was actually very young in this movie. He was like 11 or something, wasn't he? He was the first thing he ever did. And, you know, a lot of times when you've worked on different shows or it's the first time anybody ever did anything, it's kind of tough, it's kind of rough. But, you know, you struggle a little at the beginning because you've never been on a big kind of working set that moves very fast and you have a lot of scenes to do. But I think the kind of newness of Brent as a young actor came across in Horace himself, and it worked perfect. I mean, he's Horace, and no one else is Horace except for Brent. And I found out that he had passed away in it was either 95, 96, something like that.
Actually, it was 97.
97, okay. And I was actually someone that went to college with me was friends with him, and this is in North Carolina. I said, hey, did you know? And I said, I didn't know. And then, of course, like you mentioned, since 2006, when we did the Cashew Industry and the Allen Draft House, and then all of this kind of went boom for the last 10 years. That's why you're all sitting here, which is awesome. That's the one thing we always kind of mention as the, you know, kind of the gang is the fans would love to meet Brent. And he would have killed it and stuff like this. And no one would come out, we would have talked on horse. But that's one thing that's, you know, kind of missing is Brent's presence.
Does anyone else have any memories or thoughts on Brent?
What I remember about him was that, I mean, what you see on screen is, you know, that was him. He was this super sweet kid. One of my fondest memories of him is that he sort of, you know, took to me in a way that was almost exactly like our characters, you know, like in the film I sort of saved him from these bullies, and, you know, because of that, on the set, he would kind of follow me around and look up to me, and I thought that was really sweet. I tried to, hey, get away from me, kid, get out of me. But, it was impossible because he was just such a really sweet and lovely kid, and again, when I found out, I was devastated. So, again, like Audrey says, I agree, he would have killed it. He would have loved this, all of this. So, I'll say hi to him if you get a chance.
most outcasts of the outcasts. They didn't want to let me in, and he's like, you know, the one who's like kind of always following behind, and so I always felt like we sort of were partners in crime in a way. Like, you might not want us to be in, but damn it, we're gonna get in anyway. And I agree. Like, it would have been great for him to see how much everyone loves him. I think that would have been really wonderful for him, and I'm sad that he's not here to see it.
And I want to throw this question open to the whole table here because we have an equal amount of monsters and, for lack of a better phrase, non-monsters. I wanted to know, what was the interaction like on set between the bad guys and the good guys, for again, just to basically boil it down, and who stayed in character, and who was, any interesting stories about the interaction between you guys?
I think Tom comes in best. We did something similar to what we're doing right now. We did a panel not that long ago, and that was pretty much the first time I had met these guys. I remember doing a scene in the clubhouse with Tom and the mask, and they needed to do like an over-the-shoulder shot of Frankenstein's monster, and they just needed me. So we were sitting across from each other for however long that took, 2 hours to shoot that thing while they were lighting the scene. And I remember saying like, "Hey man, how you doing? You know, we're working together. This movie's cool." And then Tom was like, "Hey." And I'm like, "Oh, so it's gonna be like this." All right. So I just sat there, kind of like staring out into space, like, "Okay, this is my first movie. I don't really know any he's a professional, so I guess this is how it goes." You gotta tell your dragons.
So I actually, everyone except for Duncan and Tom made sure that they were around me in their sort of costumes without their heads on, so that I wouldn't be afraid of them. So I remember Michael particularly, at craft services, I would always see you like the back of your head, and you were always very, very sweet to me. And Tom, of course, and I were supposed to have this very sweet, loving relationship, so when I would see him on set, he was also very sweet to me. But Duncan stayed very far away. Very far away. And I never...
We didn't have a sweet relationship.
And that's true, we did not. And I actually never saw you when we were not on screen together.
Well, that was kind of on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about it. I said, you know, it's a great way to really bring forth some real frightening acting out of you. And
Yeah. Or non-acting, as the case may be.
So,
The best acting is not acting, right?
indeed. But it works.
And I remember you, whenever I would see you, you would look at me. And in the beginning of any scene that we would do, you wouldn't wear the contacts.
Just hissed at her.
It's true. You wouldn't have the contacts or the fangs in usually when you were doing my coverage because it was like too much for me. Until our last famous final scene where Duncan surprised me with the fangs and the contacts.
Were you really surprised?
Yes. I had no idea that was coming.
Best scream ever.
It was real.
Actually, Duncan, I wanted to ask you, because there have been so many iterations of Dracula throughout the years, and obviously, you know, Bela Lugosi set the template, so many people, Christopher Lee and Gary Oldman and so forth, but we haven't actually done the role at that point when you did this, but what inspiration did you draw on for your Dracula? Because I gotta say, one thing I love about your Dracula, it's the romantic image, but he's a mean son of a bitch. I mean, he's just not, you know, he's just throwing dynamite under cop cars, killing people, he's calling little girls bitches. I mean, it's just, I mean, and even as a kid watching movies, like, yeah, this Dracula is harsh. You know, and I was just wondering, what in your discussions with Fred and working on the character stuff, where did you find your Dracula?
Well, Fred and I argued all the time about how to approach the character, and I was really looking for the darkest part of a human for the character, which is kind of different from the other monsters approach. The Dracula in Monster Squad sort of doesn't really, it's not really about a monster, but, you know, applications and all that sort of thing. He's a human, he was a human being, and now he's undead, more or less. And that's really what I was going for. As I say, say Fred was sort of more on the monster side of things, and his directions were more, make a face like this, and kind of back it up with something. I think it's, so I threw a hammer at him one day. It was in character. I lost a lot of weight for the role, and my agent came back later and said, I think he was just had low blood sugar. But I was just really reaching for the most psychotic, sociopathic individual I could come up with, and it was sort of predated all the Tony Hopkins, Silence of the Lambs type of guy, and that's what I was looking for.
And then I have to say, producing the DVD was a real privilege, and probably my favorite individual part was that Tom Noonan graciously allowed us to use an on-set interview that he did as Frankenstein. And when these crews come to film actors on the set of movies, it's like an Entertainment Tonight kind of thing. You ask questions about your character getting on the movie, but you're yourself. You're the person interviewing the actor playing this part. Sometimes the actor happens to be in costume or makeup because they're on set. Tom was in full Frankenstein makeup, costume and everything on set, and the person interviewing him was Doug Llewellyn from the People's Court. And Tom did something very interesting. He wasn't Tom Noonan during the interview. He was Frankenstein, as if Frankenstein was simply an old Hollywood actor that looked like that. And I was just curious about that. How did you even come up with the idea to do that? And how did you stay in, because Doug never got on board with what you were doing. You never broke character the whole time.
I guess it came from the very beginning when I first got the job that I didn't want any of the kids to ever see me out of makeup, and I never wanted them to sort of not believe that I actually was Frankenstein. And I sort of got into that and really did. I love acting. It was just really fun doing that. And then when they said, we want you to do some press for the movie, and I said, well, I'm happy to do the press, but I will only do it if I'm in full makeup, and I'll be playing Frankenstein, the movie star. Wasn't it? It just seemed like the right thing, and it was really, really fun. And I never got to talk through. I have like, 10 lines. So this was a chance to actually have a long chat with this guy, and also Entertainment Tonight did like a 45-minute thing. It was just really fun to start to talk about this experience that I had on the movie as Frankenstein. And it was really like one of my favorite things I've ever done.
It was a brilliant improvisational exercise because you incorporated parts of Frankenstein's real history into it's like, well, I don't really get the girl. It was one thing with the girl. I didn't know she couldn't swim. It was brilliant.
I started in the business around 1930, 1931. And I had a pretty good for a while, working, I was like a prize fighter, so that sort of came out.
I want to see a whole movie about this guy's life. This is just a regular actor that looks like Frankenstein.
I'm not auditioning.
No, you would just get the part. We're not going to force it. And then I also want to ask Michael and Carl about their experience in the costume, because those had to be extremely restrictive in terms of just the movement and being able to do a performance. What are your memories of having to work in those outfits?
Well, I have to tell you, everything I've done, this was like, it was kind of a breeze almost, because it's like my costume was like it was like muscle. It was a little lightweight. The thing that took the longest was wrapping it. And I didn't feel like all restricted or anything. I felt a little tight, but not overly. Contact lenses were in and everything. So it was like, it was one of the shortest makeup jobs I had ever done. Because of the lightweight, most of the but this one night, they wanted to unwrap me really fast. It's like pouring rain. And I got lost in the woods. And I was walking around in circles, and I was like squishy button and everything. It's like, we can't find the movie, so finally someone said, we found him! And I was like walking around in circles, because they moved my trailer also. And I was like, exactly, so you could just see pinholes. And so finally they rescued me. So it was like I said, the shortest makeup job I had ever done. A little restrictive, but it was okay.
So I got my answer from 3. questions ago. I've been accused of being the quiet guy up here sometimes, so maybe I'll break that right now. My costume was incredibly hot. I didn't have to wear prosthetics. It was all getting into a football uniform. But I used to sweat incredibly. And it wasn't any fun getting back into the costume every single night the next day because it was always wet and clammy. Even though it was my wet and clammy, it was still wet and clammy. And it's not like you could send it out to the dry cleaners, you know? So, but I actually wanted to comment on a couple of other things today. That hammer that went by my head. I was the sidekick in that scene. I remember holding the lantern, and I was there. So, but I won't say anything about that. And about the child actors, I had two things I wanted to share, which was Eugene. We did a promo for the film when it premiered. We got ready up in some hotel next to the Hard Rock Cafe in Los Angeles. And he was there, and he helped me get ready that night. I just remember him putting foot powder in my little booties for me. And he was really such a sweet kid, and that stuck with me. And the other one is Brent, and I wouldn't be here without him, because it's his line that makes everybody come up to get my autograph. And I do remember finding out when he passed away. The reason I remember very clearly is because he died, I believe, at 23 years old. And my best friend was killed when he was 23 years old. So when I heard about it, it was really, it affected me. It was, I just thought, too soon. Too soon.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. It was great working with all the kids. It was really pretty wonderful. However, it was like Michael Frostino, he got really protective of me. It was really sweet. It's kind of like, he was like kind of in awe of me, and he like want to hold my hand, and it's kind of like walk me through. Mom, Mr. Mommy, are you okay? It was real sweet. And he'd walk with me, make sure I was walking, got my food. And this one time I remember I was sitting eating some food, and I was like, and he took a nap and he wiped my mouth. And he went, and he looked up at me, are you okay? And he just like looked at me like, he was very protective. I thought it was very, very sweet. He was my companion.
So for the second half of the panel, I'd like to throw it open to the audience. If anybody has any questions, just raise your hand right here. Yes, sir.
First off, I just want to say thank you guys for being here. I know for me, a lot of kids, my age, were watching the movies. I was watching the Monster Squad. So for me, that this is really special. So thank you guys for being here. Even though I really wanted to be like Rudy growing up, I was really more like Horace. So I just wanted to know, was there a lot of pranks on set when you guys were doing the movies? Like, people in the costumes, or vice versa? Or?
Any tomfoolery or pranks on set at all?
Ask these two.
Wait a minute, what?
Okay.
Like we were saying earlier, there wasn't a lot of interaction between the guys that were the monsters and us, except when we were really on set. But when you have, a set full of 5 young people, kids on a set, that's like that's a whole management thing on its own. 5 and 6, and you get like 11, 12, then you have 13 and 14, 15. It's just crazy, and so that's a whole thing in itself, a whole dynamic that happens on the set. So Ryan was the oldest by age, and then me, and then everybody else was kind of younger. It was just that normal dynamic kid dynamic, and you have a little, you're basically with these people all day long for 3.5 months. And you just have fun as kids, and I think that's what kind of translates. It's kind of rough at the beginning, you find your place, and if you're uncomfortable with somebody, you have to get over that. I remember we used to, I think Brent every once in a while would feel uncomfortable or something, and and we may not have reacted in the way that we probably should have, but we were 13. And so there was, one or two conversations with, one of the producers and probably Fred. And Fred himself was kind of instrumental in making sure that he got what he wanted from us as kids, but also we were still kids. And I think that's, you mentioned something that's very interesting of what's interesting to me on the dynamic of why this movie has its fan base that it does. I mean, this is a big room, it's full of Monster Squad fans. It's 30 years later. And there's a reason, because something connected you to this movie when you first saw it. And I started asking that question, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, like, why was it so important to you? What really made that connection? And I get these great stories. And you hit on, it's like, I think someone either relates to or connects to one or more of the characters. I've got dozens of stories of, like, I was you, my friend was Horace. We had a cool kid. His name was actually Ralph, but we called him Rudy anyway. We built a treehouse, we run around the neighborhood and killed stuff. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. But that's what translates in now. This is, we're all I was about to say we're all a room full of adults, but there's also now a second generation of Monster Squad fans. I know the Tapagots are here in force. Best cosplay ever.
Yeah, wait, let them stand up.
Tapagot crew stand up. I know asking, well, yeah, she's right here. We've got Phoebe, we've even got Eugene, we've got Patrick, and little Rudy. His phone is somewhere. But he deserves his snap, because ever since yesterday, he has been in character. Shades on, carrying his bow, no lie. But
He's not smoking.
Not yet. But that resonates, and I think you introduced it of why we're in this room, and that's a neat dynamic. So thank you for coming and not watching movies, and that's what I think is neat about this dynamic. So thank you.
Wanted to also just ask about Fred Decker, because Fred, this was his second movie. He had done The Grief right before this, went straight into Monster Squad. And I've said this for years, I think he's tragically underrated as a director. I think he is a filmmaker of enormous talent. He just got some bad breaks because the 3 movies he didn't come out the way they should have in terms of the marketing and the reception, but they've certainly endured. And I was just wondering, for the whole panel, your memories of working with Fred, the thing that stands out to you about him.
He was, like you were saying earlier, like he just, he let us be kids. And what I remember, one of my fondest memories was at this first screening right before I had ever seen the film. We were in the lobby of the theater, and he kind of, I was standing there, and he kind of came over and he leaned down to me and he said, "You know what, man? I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you. You did your job, you stepped it up, and you were Rudy, and I couldn't have asked for anything more." So that's kind of always my go-to when I think about him. And we're pretty good buds now. Still we still hang out. We like to reminisce and stuff. But I agree, man needs to direct another film. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I just remember Fred kind of being like a big kid, so it sort of felt like he was like the unnamed member of the squad, and that's what it felt like when he was on set. He was just sort of trying to have fun and trying to let us be kids, like you guys have said. And I'm sure he gave me a couple of line readings here or there, which maybe some of the older actors probably didn't appreciate, but as a 5-year-old, you don't know any better. You're just saying what they want you to say anyway, so it was fine for me. And yeah, I think he's definitely underrated as a director, and I'd love to see him be able to make something new. And hopefully that'll happen. They're filming
The Predator right now, that's why he's not here yet.
So
He and Shane Black back together again.
yeah, well, they wrote it, and I think Shane's directing.
Yeah, that's right.
So I can see how that goes.
His Fred's one or two notes to me were always, you know, you're just a regular dad, throw it away. Be who you are. Take it easy. And if Andre gets on your skin, kick him.
Yeah, we had an interesting discourse. Just saying, Carl, you know, why did I throw that hammer? And I think it has something to do with the land reading, or my audition performance. But yeah, we worked through a lot of stuff, and sometimes, you know, when you get that bristling arguments amongst each other in a creative atmosphere, you come up with good stuff in the end. It just brings a whole new energy to what you're doing. And Fred and I definitely had that. The other thing about him was that I got the impression that he was one of the kids too. It was an early picture for him, and he was fairly inexperienced, but he had strong people around him. Peter Hyams was there, and he was very experienced and very helpful as well. And somehow, between the three of us, we managed to cobble together a decent performance out of Dracula, Basil, but everybody had a great time. It was that kid atmosphere that really kept it all together. And Fred was at the core.
I was just thinking, looking back, you know, I auditioned for Fred, and usually when you audition as an actor, you always audition for casting director, unless you're Tom. And and then, you know, if you're liked, and then they remove the director or the producers later. And I was very fortunate to be brought in, and actually the casting director was there as well, but it was really with Fred. And looking back now, you know, I was thinking, if Fred wasn't there, I would have never gotten the role, because I don't think I would have done what I had done if it wasn't for what Fred had asked him. And the enthusiasm that he had was just infectious. And I just kind of followed his lead. He was telling me, and I remember this clearly, he was like, you're in a room, you're locked up, the townspeople are coming to get you, you've got torches, the doors are locked, try to get out. And that's what he gave me to go with. And I don't remember other than just going crazy and clawing at the walls. And the casting director was in one corner and Fred was behind the desk. The casting director was actually laughing. And I didn't know if she was laughing because she liked it or because she hated it. Because I was going to fool myself. Fred kept encouraging, yeah, more of that, do that, more of that, more of that. And when I left, I said, I either complete ass myself or I nailed this thing. I did Fred had incredible enthusiasm for what he was doing in this film.
I had me a good time. when I auditioned for him, I didn't go through casting and things, I went directly to him and everything. He said, he did this argument with this woman and everything, and he looked back at me. He said, okay, now, welcome. So it's like, when he looked at me, he said, as far as I'm concerned, he left the part. It's an argument. It was great. And he was like real positive, and he was like real supportive. I said, yeah. And when I saw him some years later at a convention, I said, Fred, it's been so many years. I said, he said, wonderful job, man. Wonderful job. My mommy. Yeah. It's always very cool.
There's a scene at the end of the movie where Duncan's got Phoebe and he's gonna kill her, whatever he's gonna do to her. She's screaming, and then I sort of come into frame behind Duncan and grab and throw him onto an iron fence. And I just wanted to, when you first see me appear behind Duncan, sort of say today that I had a big smile on my face. And Fred so hated this. He kept giving me shit about it, and finally I said, Fred, put me in this fucking costume. I got all this goddamn makeup on, I'm saying all the words you wrote, I'm gonna do the way I fucking want. Which I'm not, you know, it may seem like I don't do that a lot. You know? So we did it my way, and And then about 10 or I don't know how many years later, we had the first reunion, and I was on a panel with Fred, and I was like feeling like, should I tell the story? And before I could, Fred turned to me and said, you know, and told the story from his side, and at the end he said, Tom was right, and I'm really glad he did it. Which is very cool of him. And I thought it was using cool guy.
Any other questions for right here in front?
Kind of a cliche one, but who's your favorite monster?
Who is your favorite monster? Is that for everybody? Everybody.
I was always partial to Creature from the Black Lagoon, just because he was kind of different. And classic monsters, classic monsters. The Creature was great. Our Gill Man was awesome. And I'm sure Tom Woodruff would be here, but I think he's on set with Shane and Fred right now, wearing a Predator suit. But he has a pitch on for getting himself into these tight spaces. It's crazy. But I really liked our Gill Man because that suit was amazing. And besides Carl, like, which was, you know, super constrictive and hot and heavy, that thing was like a one-piece latex zip-up thing that he stayed in for like 12 hours. So historic, like, movie franchise-wise and ours, I like Gill Man, but I think we have some of the best representations of just about all the monsters and no one else does. And I think that's worse. So all of them.
I think as far as Monster Squad goes, I love Frankenstein Monster. I love that character. Tom does a good job. If we're going like all monsters, like ever, like okay, Freddy Krueger. Probably greatest monster ever.
Clearly Frankenstein, of course. And then I was petrified of Jason as a kid, going all monsters ever. Friday the 13th was out when I was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 when I first discovered it, and it scared Jesus out of me.
Klaus Kinski.
Just Klaus Kinski, the actor, is scary enough.
Yeah, he's so. I have to say, Brenda's mother, Beowulf, but it's not really necessarily anything that's happened in film. It's more a lot of literature that different Beowulf adaptations that I've read. And I have to say that's my most, two most.
Definitely the old classics. And, you know, that's why I was really pretty cool to play the Wolfman, because it was took me to have to the old classics. But I'm a big fan of the devil, and that you don't necessarily always see the devil like in The Exorcist and The Omen. They represent bad and evil. Sometimes not showing it can be a lot more scary sometimes than actually seeing it.
What came to my mind was eyes. There had to be a certain thing about eyes. Like I love the classic 30s movies, horror films, and the scary eyes of the Dracula and the mummies. I'm scared. It's crazy inside of me. And I just did a story. I did this thing called Stories, the one with the stories and everything. And decided I focused on this episode of Twilight Zone. And it was an episode called Beauty is in the Eye of the Beholder. And the doctors and nurses, they were like, they had like pig noses, and that was the beautiful people, and the beautiful people were compared to were supposed to be the ugly people. But when I was a little kid, I saw that. I jumped, scared the shit out of me. It was scary, crazy. But eyes, they're just like, they creeped me out. And Children of the Damned, Eyes, film from '64, scared me too. My brother took in the newspaper, they had a picture of Children of the Damned, the kids. And he did this thing on me where it's like I close person. He's reading the paper. And he knows I'm scared of it, so he goes like this. I jumped a mile. I was so mad. Scared the shit out of me.
Thing from Another World from the 50s.
Time for a few more questions. Any other in the very back? Go to sir.
That's a, does everybody else want to take, that's a, I can't remember the filmmaker's name, but it's an homage to a movie by Fred that had an N. Because everybody asks why there are armadillos in Eastern Europe. They're not even in Eastern Texas. And that is, I can't remember the film, I'm always blank on it when I'm trying to think of it. There is a reason, a specific reason, but not the first time it's been asked, but it's a good notice. You know, it's an homage to something that Fred had always grown up with and liked and wanted to put it in it.
We start picking apart the logic of the Monster Squad.
Oh, there's way too much.
Yeah, that's way more than we got. Anyway, over here. Yeah, Stephen, working with Stan Shaw, your partner.
Yeah.
They're all over there.
He was right there. He always had a sense of humor about it. And he could express in his own way the tight version of the reality. So I could play against it, play undercut it. And we became friends, and I always looked forward to him joining us. And for some reason, he never showed up. And I'm sorry about that. I really am. But the real thing I wanted to talk about, and I want to hear it from you. Several panels, they always say, why don't you do a Monster Squad 2? I don't believe you. I believe this was the last, a very idyllic kids movie against sort of storybook monsters who were rooted in somewhat of reality. But I think the monsters are for real now. They're out there. And if you have anything that you take away from this movie, the courage of those kids who stood up and fought the real monsters, I would say, go out and do that.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? In the very back there, yes, sir? Yeah, has there been any talk about a Monster Squad 2 or a reboot of any kind? Or because I remember hearing discussions about the next wave of monsters would have been addressed in like the 50s and 60s, that sort of thing. Has there been any discussion? Have we heard anything about Monster Squad officially coming back?
Well, as we all may or may not know, back 5, 6, 7 years ago, they were remaking it.
Yeah.
So there was a reboot of Monster Squad that ended up officially being smushed last year.
Good.
Which, usually has applause, and the internet fandom applauded that as well. As for other stuff, there's something going on right now that I don't know the actual underpinnings of it. But as for a sequel, like Steven's, I think it almost is a standalone, which is great if you leave it there. But always on the set, we were talking about, okay, now we do the sequel when this movie goes ballistic in the theaters, which it didn't. And we're gonna fight Godzilla from airplanes next time. Or something. And then we get joined by Johnny Quest and a bunch of other people. But I think there's, especially with not doing the remake, I think there's room for a return, but it would have to be done exactly right, and carry on things that we did in the first. But I don't think there's anything in the works. I know there's a really cool story somewhere that someone has, but nothing official that I know of. I mean, not know as much as others. It would be fun, but it would have to be, anything you do with it has to be done. If it's carrying on what we did, I think it would have to be done exactly right for the original fan base that also brings in that next fan base, instead of just shooting for something that completely bypasses y'all. You know, you have to make it for it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because Monster Squad is more timely now than it's ever been. I mean, look at Stranger Things. If that's not Monster Squad's audience, then what is? You know, when I'm watching on Stranger Things, going, this is every movie I've seen in the '80s, all blended together, and it's just. Actually, I think it'd be fun to see Monster Squad as a TV show, bring it back as a long, short form TV series. That would be fun. So, anyway, anywhere right down here in the front.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I appreciate you guys coming out. Actually, Michael really kind of segued into the question I had. So the movie's a kid's movie, but it's not at all really. It's like Dracula's unrealistic. I mean, he's kind of scary. You know, you feel like, and I've always felt like it's, like you said, more top down. You feel like some of the pushback and the reason why it wasn't successful is because a lot of people had a hard time digesting the fact that Dracula's calling a girl a bitch, he's blowing stuff up, and he's smoking. It's a little weird, so I didn't know what you guys thought about that.
Yeah, did you think the movie was maybe a little too hard-edged for people at that time? Because it's a kid's movie, but it definitely has some adult elements that were unusual at the time.
I jump because I actually have like a set thing that to answer your question, and I'll let someone else do it too. The movie was too much like your regard for 10, 11-year-olds. And their parents see the trailer and be like, no way, I'm not inviting my kid to all to see this. And it was too kid-oriented for 15 and 16-year-olds to be like, I'm too cool to go see that movie. There's like a 5-year-old who happens to be our hero of the movie. So in essence, we actually made the first tween movie, but it wasn't marketed as a tween movie because we didn't know what tweens were then. And then I think our original marketing campaign was a fantastic viral marketing campaign, but the internet wasn't around yet. Because it was all the posters, because all the monsters had these great wanted, dead or alive type things, like mug shots. It was really neat. It was a call to action. But where do you go? Where does that action go? And I think that's what kind of stunted it. The audience narrowed. And if they had marketed it for tweens, like I always joke, we would have made like Monster Squad 11 Breaking Dawn by now.
Oh, I would kill to see the Monster Squad take out sparkly vampires. Anyone down the panel have your thoughts on when the movie came out? Obviously, it wasn't a success. Was it disappointing to you, or were you on to the next job at that point? And what did you think of the movie when you first saw it? And were you surprised that it didn't connect?
Yeah, I was surprised, but I take full responsibility for any failure which might exist for it. Because my line, give me the end of the blue bench, so you pop the movie into the next category. At that time, that was an appropriate thing to say around Chuck. The problem still is. But it did kind of, as Bruce was saying, change the category and popped it up a little bit. So, in another way, the movie was obviously a little bit ahead of its time. Hence, all of you are here. And all things will go on. It's got its legs now. We didn't have legs then. I think the other thing, it's all timing with the movies coming out, what the competition is, and exactly what's going on in politics. Everything affects whether the movie will have an audience or success. And maybe that was the right time, but now it is.
Well, I think we came out the same weekend as the Lost Boys. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were like against the Lost Boys. That's right. If you were 14 and you wanted to go see a vampire movie, you went to see the Lost Boys. And this was too young, like we were saying.
Yeah, it's like after it came out, it's kind of like, wow, this is a good movie. It's like, but from that point on, I started falling into like playing creatures and monsters and everything. It was like a catapult, going rock and rolling and everything. But it really surprised me that years later, it's like, it's like there's wonderful fans like you. It's like it's called classic film. It's very cool, and you guys are just really wonderful. It's like, wow, this is really great. So it's it was really quite a surprise, a pleasant surprise to that.
So we are going to wrap things up here in a minute, but I just wanted to say, this movie came out, I was 14 years old, so I was the same age as a lot of the kids in the movie. And I related to the Monster Squad more than I did say from like the Goonies, because I looked at the kids and I recognized myself in your characters. I wanted to believe, I wanted to be Rudy. I kind of thought I was Sean. I was perceived as Horace because, well, come on. But really, I was more like Phoebes because I was kind of precocious and I used a lot of foul language. So I understood these people very much, and I was terrified of the monsters. The movie had a wonderful edge to it, and yet it was so heartfelt that you could go from Dracula walking nonstop, killing people left and right without breaking a stride, to 5 minutes later having Frankenstein in a vortex holding a teddy bear and I'm crying. This movie did a lot of things right. It's only now finally getting the credit for it, and it's proof that the movie's connecting because there's not a single seat open here, and there's a reason for that. So give it up for the cast.
Sitting down better than we can say. It's pretty well go for. Ryan and I are working on a project, and everywhere we go as a group, we get our groups to do one thing. And we said it a couple of times tonight. It's the line of the movie that everybody knows. So a big group got Wolfman's got Nards on 3. We ready? We need a line reading, or we all good?
I think they got it.
Wolfman's got